Good morning, Rotary Club of Centennial. Sorry for the accommodations. I think John dropped the ball. Mr. Shattuck, do you have a inspiration for us this morning?
I do. What is important is not in front of you. What is important is not behind you. What is important is what is in you.
All right. By the way, I do have to thank Ann for that quote of the day. You're absolutely right, Ann.
What's that?
The quote of the day in the newsletter. Yeah, what pops into your mind doesn't necessarily have to pop out of your mouth.
This is testing to see who read it.
John McCarty, would you please lead us in the pledge? Is there a flag?
There's a flag on the screen.
Oh, okay.
I think if we get rid of the thing on the... There it is.
All right.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Ostergaard, do you have a Rotary Minute for us?
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I have a couple items today, and they're both short. First of all, I don't know how many of you live in the city Centennial, but the city sends out a Centennial Connection, which I got on Saturday. And on the front page of that are two esteemed members of our club. This is from the state of the city, and President Eunice and Samantha Rowe and our esteemed district governor are in the picture. So, also, it does have the dates for the upcoming events that we'll be selling beer at. So, I'll pass this around. I don't need it back. I've already read it. So, the other thing I wanted to bring everybody up to date on was RILA. We have basically completed our interview process. We have made our 5 selections for senior RILA. Paperwork for 4 of them is in, so they're done, they're finalized, they're ready to go. I'm still waiting on paperwork from one student. I'm working with her on getting that. We're sending 2 boys and 3 girls to the senior RILA. Junior RILA, we have both spots filled. We have interviews completed on those 2, and paperwork in on one of them and finalized. Thank you, Randy and Nora. And the other student, I just interviewed her on Saturday, and we'll have that paperwork in. So we'll have a full slate of students going to both camps this year, and I'm very excited about that. Remember, keep it in mind for next year, RILA's Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. It's a camp for the senior high students up at Estes Park. For the junior high students, it's down at the Ponderosa Retreat in Larkspur. Excuse me. Hate this weather. The students for junior high age are 7th graders. For senior high, they should be sophomores and juniors this year. So next year, it'd be this year's freshmen and sophomores, obviously. So anyway, there's your update. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kent. I'd also like to thank Randy for getting here early, slogging through the snow, getting our wonderful facility set up, and John Wexler for taking it down. John, it's a lot easier when it's like this than when you're in the other room. We do have a couple of guests here today. First guest is Jason Statt, the guest of Lori Overton. Jason, you want to stand up and grab a microphone and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Jason Statt, as you already know. I'm a Colorado native. I live west of Sedalia now. I've been in the mortgage business for about 15 years, and I'm an owner and operator of Bighorn Mortgage Group. I love the outdoors, love dirt biking, camping, and have a beautiful wife and 2 wonderful daughters.
All right. Well, welcome. Hope to see you back next week. And John Sebastian, who I know is behind that column right there, John Barry's guest. John, would you like to stand up and give us a little brief word about yourself? There you go.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm actually John Sebastian, originally from Senegal in West Africa, but I've been here in Denver since 2000, and I'm actually finance and accounting manager, University of Colorado, Enshu Medical Center. So I've been talking to John, who pretty much told me about you guys. I was actually a previous member of Rotary International back in Senegal. So it's a pleasure being here today to get to meet all of you guys.
Very good. Welcome, John. Okay, we did all the weddings and birthdays and Rotary anniversaries the beginning of the month. So we'll get into some club business. Yes. What? Another? No, she's our speaker, LaToya. Yeah. Yes. And we'll be hearing a lot from LaToya very soon. Okay, one reminder for you. Next week, we'll be collecting from the polio pigs and any polio contributions that you want to make. The pigs are great. They've got your spare change in them, hopefully. We'll have a box. Hopefully we're in a room next week. We'll have a box in the back of the room you can dump your pigs into, or throw some change, or write a big check. It's all up to you. Cheryl Mayberry, can I call on you to talk about an event tomorrow afternoon?
Sure. Tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m., the Primetimers are meeting for happy hour at Bar Louie. That's the bar right next to the theater at Streets at South Glen. And you're all welcome, and we'd love to see you there. I need to tell you one more thing that happened this past weekend that's, I guess, interesting. Karen Fleck and I took Raphael down to the Air Force Academy. So we get in, and we have our IDs out. Raphael has his passport out, and the guard says you can't go in because there's nobody here to clear passports. So we drove down there, and we made a U-turn. And by the way, they don't hand your ID back to you. They wait till you've made the U-turn, and you're on your way out. I'm just saying. So we went to Bud's Bar in Sedalia and had hamburgers.
Hey, whatever. I'm sure there's
Thanks, Cheryl. All right. I do want to make an announcement about June 7th is the Millennials putting on the dinner at the Ronald McDonald House. John, that's on the website, right, for sign up? So please sign up and participate. Yes, John.
On the sign up, on the sign up on the wonderful website, which is a great tool, John, it says that, like, I want to be here and then I need to bring something. Like, I need to bring appetizers or I need to bring dessert. That's, if you sign up, you're bringing something. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So everybody brings something, and then if you want to, you can stay there and serve, or you can just drop it off. But it's a lot of fun to go there and serve and talk to some of the semi-permanent residents there and hear some of their stories about what they've gone through with their kids and their illnesses. All right, and then June 14th, another opportunity to sign up, and that's for the summer kickoff at Centennial City Park. So you can go on the website there and sign up for a position. That's our first summer beer fundraising event, and it'll be the first time that we will have beer from Spice Trade Brewing. And then I would like to have Samantha Johnson speak about our upcoming visioning.
Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning. So, some of you, now I'm all confused. Stop talking to me while I'm talking. Some of you know about our club visioning. Those that do not know, June 19th, we will be having a club visioning. Now, this happens basically usually every 3 to 4 years. So this year, what we want to do is have as many members come as possible, because we want to make sure that the leadership is in alignment with what our members want and what you guys really want us to focus on. And so it will help me in the upcoming year, Diana, and then whoever Diana chooses coming up. So because we want to be on the same page as you guys and not just randomly creating random projects, please come. It's June 19th, 5:30 to 9, and we are still determining the place of where we're going to be gathering, which we should know in by the beginning of June. So one other thing too with that is if you decide to come, please make sure to come for the full time, because we really need that dedicated time to get all of your feedback and to go through the entire visioning process. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Samantha. She's really worked hard putting this all together. Mr. Hanna, please come up here and talk to the group. Doug? There you are. Okay.
Good morning, all. Now, I'm sure there are people here like me.
Hold it a little closer, Doug.
Who have seen some of our compatriots in those great Rotary shirts that say with the emblem and that say Centennial, Colorado. And I'm sure you've laid awake at night wishing that you could have such a shirt. And I can make that dream come true. So I've got a form I'm going to pass out. They're going to be short sleeve shirts, button down, collars. You have a choice of black or white. So I'd like to get this form circulated, put down your size, and then a W if you would prefer a white, and a B if you'd prefer black. And we think we'll be able to get them for $29. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. The question was polyester or cotton. Go ahead.
Is it a polo shirt or a button-down shirt?
No, it's a button-down shirt.
It's a button-down shirt. I think it's a blend. I think it's a blend, yeah. Well, this is different. So
Ann West, do you need to speak about Meals on Wheels? Okay. All right. Mr. Butler.
My good people filled in the blanks on June and we're set.
Okay. Mr. Butler, would you like to talk about a great event coming up that we want everybody to be at?
The first invitation is out. Save that date. I know we got plenty of time to think about it, but June 29th at my house is the changing of the guard. Don't bring anything but your bad self, unless you're a vegan. And you better bring something. I'm already nervous that I don't have the right stuff. But please come on, you guys. This is an all hands event. Give Tim a chance to toast everybody that worked so hard this year. Thanks.
Thanks, Tripp.
Hey, Tim, can I make a public service announcement over here?
Oh, there you are. Yeah, go for it.
I was greeter today, and the sign-in sheets got a late start, so I started passing around the sign-in sheets. Apparently last week got missed, so nobody got counted last week. So who has the sign-in sheet right now? Okay, it's over here. So as that comes around, when it's all done, just give it to me. But make sure you got counted for last week and this week.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Cheryl, I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you give us an update on your project, where you are with the fundraising and all that?
To be real frank with you, I haven't gotten any further. I have been tied up with my own business so much.
Okay, well, remind the club of what project you're working on here.
The project I'm working on, which I would greatly benefit by having any input from you that have phone numbers and contact names, is I am raising funds, $16,000, to purchase or provide the monies for this playground that I will be building at an orphanage in Mansouriya, Lebanon, which is where I lived for 2 years of my life as a child. And it is at an orphanage and school combined. And I would really welcome anybody who knows contacts of people that might be interested in contributing towards this purchase of this playground. And I, especially with the Rotary Club, other Rotary Clubs, I do have some contact names. And after Memorial weekend is when I'm really going to hit the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
And anybody who can help Cheryl with that fundraising effort, I'm sure she would appreciate it. Just so you know, our foundation is backing that project.
All right.
Okay, are there any travel gifts? No travel gifts. Nobody traveled? Of course not. There's 6 inches of snow out. So, Lori Overton, are you doing Happy Bucks today?
Glory, glory.
Right, I'll just start down here. Can you hear me? There we go. All right, are we happy? No happy? Happy, happy? Ah, come this way.
It's Tuesday, and I'm glad we've got our 2 guests here joining us. So happy Tuesday.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna come around this way. What are we happy about, John?
I've got 3. First one is very happy for our guests. Thank you guys for coming. Second is a happy buck because Karen and I are bugging out for Indianapolis tomorrow for the 500 this Sunday. Woohoo! And the third one is actually a sad buck. I know a lot of you guys don't follow racing, but Nicky Lauda passed away yesterday. Nicky was the toughest man ever to set foot in a race car. Watch the movie Rush to get a better idea.
Right. Come this way. Are we happy?
I have 2, one for the guests, nice to meet you, and the other, I'm happy to be representing the club in Madagascar in a couple weeks.
Awesome. Anybody else down this way? How about this table?
I have $1. I'm really happy school's almost over, and it seems like both my kids did well and survived the year.
Awesome. But this way. Do we have any happy bucks here?
I'm happy that I was able to find my snow brush underneath my golf clubs in the back seat of my truck this morning.
A 2-1 for our speaker from Cherry Creek Schools. Thanks for being here. And it appeared my trees survived the snowstorm.
Tree damage, definitely. How about over here, guys? Any happies? Happy, happy. Anne's happy.
A couple of my trees
Here we go.
out.
I'm happy that we have our guests here and a speaker. Thank you so much.
I have a couple of happy bucks. One, my wife successfully made it through surgery yesterday, so
Awesome.
that's a big deal. I'm headed over to see her after our breakfast. And 2, my trio and I went up and represented our club and successfully helped out the Niwot Rotary Club do their fundraiser with chocolate, what was it, wine, cheese, and chocolate. Okay, up at the Longmont Museum this last weekend, and they had a successful time at that.
Excellent.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm happy because I'm leaving on Saturday on a jet plane to go to Anchorage for a 7-day cruise through down to Vancouver.
Oh, you want the money? Yeah, I want the money. Okay. Give me the money.
Hi, this is a get well buck for Paul Horiuchi. He hasn't been feeling well since he got back from Phoenix. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, but anyway, we all wish him well. So happy get well buck.
I'm just happy to be here. Welcome, guests.
Happy? Right.
two happy thank yous. One to Ann West for leadership and giving us an opportunity to do Meals on Wheels. The other to LaToya Tolbert. Thanks for coming today.
All right. Did I miss anybody?
Behind you.
Behind me.
I have a microphone.
Yes.
I'd like to, I'm happy to see our guests today. Thanks for being here. And I'd also like to say that I'm happy for John Holtzman to be our representative going off to Madagascar. When do you leave, John? June 1st. June 1st. Awesome. Okay, so next week. I have a big going away soiree for you, right? We'll have breakfast, okay? All right. That's it, yeah.
All right. So I'm happy. I'm going to add some money to this because the snow came before my husband and I are going to go on a trip. So down south in Colorado, we're going to kind of do this swing through Gunnison, Telluride, Cortez, and then back up. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks, Lori, for doing that. And Mr. Bellum, are you introducing our guest speaker today?
Well, come on up, LaToya.
No whites.
Well, excellent. It is really my pleasure to introduce LaToya Tolbert, who is the Director of Inclusive Excellence at Cherry Creek Schools. LaToya was originally scheduled for the day after Martin Luther King Day, and was to be our Martin Luther King Day kind of program. But as you remember, we had a really big snowstorm on that day. Yeah. So there's I told her this morning, I said, there is something special. And if we're ever having a really hot summer, we're going to get her scheduled for like a July program and definitely cool things down. So, again, like I said, I'm very happy to finally have the honor to have LaToya speak with us. She has been, and she had so many different roles that she's done, so I told her I'd just boil it down. So she's been an educator for 21 years, which is awesome, and that includes the gamut from teacher, coordinator, assistant principal, and now most recently as director. And how long have you been in the Cherry Creek School Districts now?
This is 12 years in Cherry
12
Creek.
years. 12 years in Cherry Creek. So with that, I will let LaToya tell you about the work that Cherry Creek Schools does in the area of inclusive excellence.
Thank you so much, John. Good morning, and thank you. I appreciate the time to be able to speak with you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. It is my honor to be with you this morning on behalf of Cherry Creek Schools. So I come to you as an educator, as a parent in Cherry Creek, and as a representative of the Office of Inclusive Excellence. So again, thank you. What wonderful just updates here in this space this morning with all of the give backs and the service orientation that I hear just being in your presence for a few minutes. So I appreciate what you're doing and just am in awe of just the time with you. So I am here to speak on behalf of Cherry Creek Schools and to offer what we do in the Office of Inclusive Excellence specifically. But before I jump in there, just to give you a little bit about who I am and how I landed in this space with you. I am a product of Cherry Creek Schools. I went through DPS for elementary school and then transitioned in middle school to Horizon Middle School and then on to Smoky Hill High School. So it was always coming home when I returned back to Cherry Creek Schools. I started my teaching career in Aurora Public Schools, taught first grade, never thought I'd leave a first grade classroom. I walked into teaching with the idea of I am going to write on the chalkboard whenever I want to. As a 6-year-old, that was my why. If you were to ask me why did I go into education, that was my why at 6. It evolved, and now it's a little bit, it's different, and it's about children and being in service to children. So from there, 9 years in Aurora as a classroom teacher, instructional coach, moved into Cherry Creek as a district coordinator, and in that arena, I was charged to support our English language learners who joined our district. We have over 115 languages spoken in our district. district. And so as a department, our charge was to go and make sure that our language learners were getting what they needed to excel in our classrooms. So I did that for about 4 years and then went on to administration. And I was an assistant principal at the Hollies. So those of you who are familiar, the split campus of the Hollies, it's its own wonderful challenge. And then on to the principalship at Coyote Hills Elementary School out in the Southlands area. And then Cimarron Elementary was my last tenure as principal. So that was truly coming full circle back home because Cimarron feeds to Horizon, which feeds to Smoky. So I returned home and in my career as a principal, loved it, and never thought I'd leave the principalship. And last year I got a call to say, you know what, we need you to serve as director. And I said, okay. So here I am today as director in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that actually means. So it's ironic that I'm speaking in May on behalf of Dr. King, but what I would offer you is his legacy lives with us every single day. So it's not just a January day that we think of the contribution, who we are as a result of the hard work, not only of Dr. King, but those who surrounded his work and just the charge of civil rights. But it's what we do in our office. So the idea of the moral imperative, empowerment, affirmation, freedom, humanity, justice, rights, love, voice, those are the things that we too in the Office of Inclusive Excellence speak to. Are you having a hard time hearing me? Okay. All right. I apologize for that. I felt like I was screaming in the mic.
Therein lies the problem. Stand back more
Everybody awake now? Thanks for awakening every guest in the hotel.
Just making sure you're with me. That's a teaching strategy. Just, check to see if you're attentive and with me. Much better. Thank you so much. So again, the impact of Dr. King's work on what we do in Cherry Creek Schools, it really truly it is aligned with what we do and what we espouse to do on a daily basis. So from there, the Office of Inclusive Excellence, we support the 54,000 children that are in Cherry Creek schools. And our purpose is we exist for a larger cause, bigger than ourselves, bigger than any one specific thing that we're charged to do. It's that greater cause of disrupting and dismantling any type of power structure that has historically either limited or prevented children from getting the access and opportunities that they deserve. So our why, we're bound in this belief that every child deserves excellence. We have it on our school buses. You see it everywhere you go in Cherry Creek schools, that it says we're dedicated to excellence. And so our charge is to make sure that every child receives the excellence that they are entitled to. We're charged to break boundaries and shatter ceilings that would prevent children from getting what they need. Our belief is that if we don't have a choice, it is our moral imperative to do what's right by the 54,000 children we serve. Again, we're charged, not only you'll see that students is in all caps because it's all about students. That is why we do what we do every day, but it's to ensure that students and parents, community members, teachers, administrators, our entire collective Cherry Creek School community is affirmed for who they are, and without dehumanizing anyone else. This is about affirming and lifting up the different identities that children and families and community members and staff members bring with them, and to feel honored as you walk into the space. What we really focus on is making sure that not one person, not one child is asked to leave a part of themselves at the door in order to receive success in our schools. This really has an incredible significance for me as a parent. I actually have 4 children, and I say it that way because my husband and I met in 3rd grade, and we had 2 children. We have a 5th grader over at Challenge in Cherry Creek, and we have a 9th grader at Cherry Creek High School. And then lo and behold, last year, about 9 months ago, actually, we were blessed with twins. So unexpectedly, we were like, these little double blessings are a wonderful joy to our life. And so now we have 4. So we doubled overnight, literally. And so this moral imperative is not only for 54,000, but those 4 little Toberts that are a part of Cherry Creek Schools are also included. And so, again, making sure that none of the 4 are asked to leave a part of themselves at the door, but that they can step into our schools in their full humanity and in their full identity as well. So what is inclusive excellence? Inclusive excellence truly means all means all. We're not saying all means some, or all means, well, if you can conform to this type of identity, or if you can show up in this way. We truly mean all means all. So with that, it's about raising achievement for all children, every single child in the Cherry Creek Schools, making sure that we don't have any discrepancies, whether it be by disability or by predictability by race or predictability by religious orientation, sexual orientation. We want to make sure that every child in our school district receives excellence and raising achievement for all. We want to make sure that we close any gaps or barriers that may exist in access and opportunity. And so what that looks like is it's continuously scrutinizing, interrogating the systems and structures, both at the building level and at the district level, to see what are we doing in support of our children's learning. And then eliminating predictability based on race. If we look at national trends and along disciplinary lines, along academic lines, there's a predictability that unfortunately exists around our students of color. I just shared with you I have 4 beautiful, brilliant black children, and I do not want any one of those 4 to walk into a space and have a narrative of low expectations or any type of idea that they can't achieve the greatness that they were born to be. So our office looks to make sure that we examine our data to see, is there a predictability? If I were to cover up names, could I even tell who's going to succeed in this school, who's going to fail in this school, who's going to succeed in our district, who's going to fail in our district? We do not want predictability in that way. So that's our charge, is to eliminate predictability based on race. We are a tiny and mighty office. We don't have a ton of folks working with us. We're a team of 7, and we're a powerhouse. Who's in our office is our district counseling coordinator. She is Joy Green, and she works with all of the counselors at the middle and high school level, coordinating programs, coordinating counseling, both on the college and career path and supporting students with that part of their journey, but then also serving in crisis. And what I can tell you is this year, our children have faced a number of crises that they shouldn't in growing up as a child. And having conversations with my high schooler to say, you're a freshman, this is not what high school should be about. And they've had loss at Cherry Creek High School. It's not normal. I don't want him to think this is normal for his education. So Joy is tasked with supporting our counselors, working alongside mental health to make sure that students are getting what they need, both on the college and career planning side and also on that supporting that mental health side. We also have our AVID coordinator in our department, Dr. Sandy Mason. Her charge is to go out and support our AVID programming. AVID is all about making sure that students are prepared with those soft skills, the study skills, the organizational skills, the preparation of what does it would mean to be successful as a student. She does all the coordinating for that, and she's a really amazing woman. We have the CRE coaches in our office. CRE stands for Culturally Responsive Education, and it's just that, being responsive. If I am noticing that my students aren't receiving the information in the way that I intended, how am I adjusting my instruction to meet their needs? It's based on 6 themes that focus on rigor, focuses on cultural identity, vulnerability, relationships, asset-focused factors, and making sure that those components are in play to ultimately push learning for children. And then equity. Equity is a part of our office as well. And with that, we're charged to look at, again, systems and structures that have historically not served our children well. And so in looking at that, we're looking at the gamut of identities, like I shared before, and looking to see what do we need to ask questions about, how might we challenge ourselves to push learning forward for all. So ultimately, we are an office. We're a family of phenomenal educators, and our aspirations are truly to serve our system. We are all about academic excellence and looking at our adaptive work so that we can allow children to show up as their authentic selves, ultimately ready to change the world. So when we say all means all, the 54,000 children in Cherry Creek School District, we are looking at the full gamut of their identity, their linguistic identity, their religious identity, their racial identity, their ethnic identity. So we're looking at all parts of our students. Here is a picture of what racially or ethnically our district's distribution is. So we have 53% of our 54,000 children identify as white. We have our next largest group, 19% identify as Latino or Hispanic. We have from there 11% of our children identify black. And then we have 9% identifying as Asian, 7% identifying as multiracial, and then 1% American Indian, Alaskan Native. And in that 0%, there are other identities and ethnicities represented. The N is so small that's why it's captured. It's like 0.0125. So we have a framework under which we operate, the pillars that we stand on to make sure that we're doing our work in the Office of Inclusive Excellence. These are the 4 pillars we stand on. One, looking at our systems and structures of support to see what do we have in place, all the way down to looking at master schedules at the high school level, looking at our minutes at the elementary level to ensure that we are devoting the time that we need for children to get the learning that they need to be excellent in who they are. So that's one pillar, really examining those systems and structures of support. We also have a racial consciousness pillar, and what that does is it looks at how might we lean into conversations around race when in our country we've been brought up to know, let's not talk about really politics, religion, or race. Those are the 3 things we're really not going to have conversations about. We actually lean into conversations about race in a way that's healthy and productive so that we can, again, do right by our children. Cultural competence, we're looking at those different ways in which we come to be in spaces together. So in this, we have courses that we offer to teachers. We have an Indigenous Voices course where teachers are able to take it and understand more fully what it means to navigate our system as an Indigenous student. We have a Judaism in the World course and how that is operational in our system. What does it look like to navigate there? We also offer a Islam in the World course as well. And we are on track to offer an LGBTQIA, so that's students who identify it's looking at gender identification, sexual orientation, and those things. That course is slated to launch this next fall. So lots of courses to elevate cultural competence, and we really like to look at it as cultural humility in the sense of competence means that I can almost gain expertise in a culture. That's tricky. There's nuances. I can always be a learner, and I can be humble in the fact that I might not know your exact walk, but I'm willing to sit and listen and learn and be able to be more responsive in what I do. So that's what that pillar is all about. And then culturally responsive education, again, is about our instructional design and delivery to make sure that the children are getting what they need to be successful from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. So our theory of action, what's our plan? Our theory of action truly is this thinking that if we elevate our collective racial consciousness, drawing attention to historical racial inequities that have impeded inclusive excellence for all, then our CCSD staff will identify, interrupt, and dismantle systems that are rooted in whiteness and detrimental to the futures of all. So really unpacking what are the things that are potentially getting in the way of student success and making sure that we eliminate those things and put things in place that are beneficial to all. So like I said, we lean into conversations about race in Cherry Creek School District. We do have protocol because what we know is if there's not a specific protocol or tools being used to navigate such a challenging conversation, then there will be missteps. There will be folks will walk away from that conversation not in their full humanity. So we want to make sure that everyone is lifted and maintains their full humanity while asking challenging questions. So these are the tools that we use. We use the compass that allows those in the conversation to get centered and find out, where am I entering into this conversation? Am I entering in from a thinking space and really asking a lot of questions, looking at that data that I referenced earlier and having questions about the data? Am I entering into the conversation from a feelings space, feeling excited, feeling nervous, feeling frustrated? Where am I entering? Am I entering from believing on that moral imperative that it is our charge to serve all? And again, the service orientation that I heard this morning really aligns with that, stepping in from that believing quadrant. Am I entering from acting? I'm ready to do something. I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to have the data look different, and I'm ready to get my feet on the ground and move. So depending on where I'm entering into the conversation kind of guides maybe how I approach the topic. And so with that, if someone else is entering from a different place, it's good to be mindful of that, because we may or may not be having the same conversation depending on where we're entering. Ideally, we work towards getting centered so that we can hear each other more fully and hear from a different part of ourselves. The conditions are the content of our conversation, so looking at how I have experienced, so it's all about the I and not speaking on behalf of all. I can share my experience in Cherry Creek as a student and then offer questions to say, is that your journey? Are you a Colorado native? Tell me about your experience. As a Colorado native, this is what I've experienced in our school system, and that here's where I was affirmed, here's where I was not as affirmed. And so I can speak my truth. That's condition one. The other conditions, again, allow us the time and space to unpack some of the challenges that we face on racialized conversations, and so it again gives us a grounding space for the conversation. And then the agreements, knowing that it's challenging to have conversations about race, so we're going to agree to stay engaged, we're going to speak our own truth, we're going to experience discomfort because it can be quite uncomfortable to have some conversations about race, and then we're going to accept and expect non-closure, knowing that it's been 400 years that our country has kind of danced in this area, and so how do we come to a solution or a resolution? It's going to take some time. So those are the tools that help us to have healthy, productive conversations about race. Our staff are trained. We have a 2-day seminar that staff go through to get trained on the protocol, and then we go out and use it in our system. So ultimately, circling back to Dr. King, it is really truly that we are the hope and dream of Dr. King's speech, his ideology, and what he offered to us in his work. So as educators, we're called to educate the youngest child, the middle child, the oldest child, the unexpected child, those double blessings that we have, the later in life child, the wild child, the special child, the strong-willed child, the angelic child, the peculiar child, the intelligent child, the artistic child, the athletic child, the musical child, the out-of-control child, the perfectionistic child, and every child in between. We truly stand on the idea of all means all. So the students of Cherry Creek fall on all ends of that spectrum, and our office is compelled to labor tirelessly alongside our community to ensure that our 54,000 students' exceptional needs are addressed, validated, and met. So that is the Office of Inclusive Excellence. That is the work that we do for the community, and I appreciate your time and thank you, and any questions you might have for me.
I had a question. What do you do to reach out to the parents, particularly when there's language barriers and things like that? I know it's very hard for them to walk into the school, into a meeting with a lot of parents.
Yes.
What do you do for that?
Fantastic question. Thank you. So we actually have a language and supports department, and we are equipped with 11 languages that we have a cultural liaison equipped to speak multiple languages. Languages that do not fall within the 11, we also outsource to different language services. But to your question, it is the expectation that if you're having a school event, or if we have a district event that I'll talk about in a second here, that you are reaching out to our language supports and services department to get cultural liaisons and interpreters to the event in preparation to support families. We'll have families wired to be able to hear, and they're translating simultaneously as meetings are going on and things like that. Any, like an IEP, so for special education, students have specific meetings around that. It is required by law that parents are receiving information in a language they understand. So again, we reach out to that Language Supports and Services Department to make sure that that happens. We also have at the district level and at the building level as well, we have meetings monthly. And one of the meetings is, and I would invite you all to it, so hopefully I can send that information to you if you're ever interested. We do host one at Grandview, which is in the Centennial, city of Centennial. So it's called District Partnerships for Academically Successful Students. That meeting in particular, it runs very similar to a district accountability committee. The difference is it has an emphasis on what are the needs of our families of color that might be different, and maybe it's a linguistic need that's different than I might see in a different space. And so we are charged to look at data, have conversations about what's going on for our students, and making sure we hear our parents. We also have a district meeting monthly where we're going out and working with our cultural liaisons to bring parents into the community, into the school system, so that we can hear what's on their minds. So really just trying to feet to the ground, working with families. And if we're noticing that something we're doing is not, we're not being responsive, then we're asking parents, what's a different way that we would be able to communicate in a way that you're able to hear? Oftentimes, alternate venues, like coming to outside of a school, to a different location, a church or the park, to meet with parents and hear what they need. Yes, please.
Chart. Seeing 54,000 students on the chart, I'm curious as to what percent that is of the total school population. What was the question?
So 54,000 students on the chart. What is that percentage of the total school population in Cherry Creek? Is that your question? So that is the total. I'm going to go back to the graph here. We have a total of 54,000. So that would be all of the students in Cherry Creek School District. We have 54 in Cherry Creek. Yeah. 54,000 in Cherry Creek schools. We're the 4th largest district in the state of Colorado. Thank you. The best. I heard that one. Yes.
It seems to me that a lot of this implementation is going to come down to the individual classroom teacher. So what kind of resources are you providing those individual teachers who the class size varies from 30 to 35 or whatever, to make sure that this philosophy is implemented?
Absolutely, thank you. So we do have instructional coaches, and this year we are launching 20 additional district-wide instructional coaches that will basically go out and support teachers, not only on a one-on-one level, but also we're really doing a lot of work around professional learning communities, so working with teacher grade level teams to unpack questions that are coming up. So if I'm working with my grade level team or my department team at the middle and high school level, and I have my data, and I juxtapose my data with my colleagues' data, and for whatever reason I have a group of students who are not excelling, the instructional coach can sit in that space and facilitate dialogue with the teachers there to say, what are we doing? What are we missing? How do we respond differently so that students are getting what they need? So our instructional coaches is one way that we're doing it. We also have those CRE coaches, or culturally responsive education coaches. They also are charged with going out into the buildings, working directly with teacher teams to make sure that they are getting what they need. I also have the opportunity to work directly with our elementary, middle, and high school principals. And what I'm doing is looking at our evaluation tool and looking at different components on the evaluation tool to do look fors. Because as a principal, your job, and assistant principal as well, but your job is to go into classrooms and look to see what type of instruction is in place, who's meeting learning targets, what are you doing if students are not meeting learning targets, how are you being responsive? And so creating a space to support principals with what are the look fors, what does it look like, sound like, and feel like for all to really mean all. So those are some of the things that we're doing in our district. Yes, please.
Do you have the ability to measure your effectiveness and successes?
Thank you for the question. So yes, yes, so we have some quantitative ways of measuring, and absolutely. So if we even things like based on the number of teachers, I had shared that we have a required training beyond diversity seminars. Based on the number of teachers we have, how many teachers attended. So we want to increase attendance. That's one of the goals in our inclusive or instructional excellence strategy on the district strategic plan. But we're really looking at how do we also quantify more qualitative data. So we're looking at ways, because sometimes you will sit with a teacher and you will say, teachers will say things like, wow, this conversation has helped me see this student differently, and now I'm going to apply a different instructional approach to their learning. That's not necessarily captured on a CMAS or a state standardized test in that moment. Because if I teach kindergarten, my students don't take the standardized tests. I take iReady, which is a state reading test. I take classroom assessments and things like that. But the formative assessments that are needed to see that quick turnaround and that responsiveness also live in that qualitative data. So right now our department is attending closely to our quantitative data, which are standardized assessments, our ACT scores, and looking to close discrepancies that we might have there. So we have that component. Now we're looking to see what are some of the qualitative ways, qualitative data we can gather. How might we quantify that data so that we can measure our effectiveness differently?
So, great presentation on how Cherry Creek is addressing, the Cherry Creek School District is addressing this important function. Is this a model that's typically seen in school districts across the nation? Is Cherry Creek doing it a little bit differently? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Again, I would love to say Cherry Creek is always on the cutting edge. So, yes, there are other districts doing equity work in some capacity, but we often have districts reaching out to us to see how are you systematizing things like racial consciousness. Like that is, I don't even know where to start with that. So we're getting a lot of questions around that. Brooke Gregory, she's currently one of our chief of strategic initiatives, she will assume the role of president of Pacific Educational Group, which is one of the groups that we work with around our equity and racial equity transformation work. She will now be the CEO and president there. So she was honored as a district leader nationwide. So we're definitely, and she's the leader who allowed me to even be in this space with you and connecting with Dr. Livingston here. She's a powerhouse. And so we have folks that are slated to push our thinking in a way that is bigger and broader, where other districts are looking to us to say, what are you doing? The LGBTQ course and some of the work we're doing there, we have Boulder coming in, looking to see what we're doing. We have districts from Idaho coming in, seeing specifically what we're doing with our English language learners. We're one of the highest performing districts around English language learners and exiting and access and opportunity there. So we definitely have some pieces that we're leading the way on. And as a dedicated to excellence, that's always our charge, to lead the way.
One follow-up question. There's 100 plus languages that are spoken. What are the top 5?
Top 5, we have Spanish. We also have a large number of Arabic-speaking children, Korean, Chinese, and then we also have Amharic, which is Ethiopian and Eritrean, are probably our top 5. Russian's also up there and leading the way too.
I'm curious about balance. So I'm not exactly sure how to express this in almost a polite manner, but you mentioned, for example, you have courses on Judaism or Jewish contributions and Islamic, but what about the Native American or the Hindu or Buddhist? I mean, you've got a bunch of Asians, or a lot of kids are coming from secular families or Christian families, but you don't seem to have anything about that. Absolutely. Or similarly, LGBTQIA, I don't know what the IA stands for, but what about the cisgendered, or the, as I've heard it's called, or heterosexual? And then in all, when we have all these emphases, where does academics come in? Or are we so involved in trying to be socially conscious that academics gets pushed aside? Again, where does all this fit in?
Sure, I appreciate the question. So to clarify, the courses that I was referencing are for educators, for the adults, to elevate their understanding in order to support children. The reason why we do have an Indigenous Voices class, which speaks to the experience of Native American, American Indian families in our district. But the reason why those specific courses have been brought on is because of when we start to look at our, not only our discipline data, when we look at our mental health data, and we look at like suicide risk assessments and threat assessments, when we start to see patterns of which children are having the most difficult time having their identity affirmed, that's when we start to say, what are we going to do about it? It's not to say that other experiences don't also need courses taught to get the full breadth of the experience of all of the multifaceted cultures and identities and ethnicities in Cherry Creek. But when we're talking about from that district perspective of how do we respond, we've had a lot around some anti-Semitism in some of our schools. So again, it's like, well, we have a compelling need, we need to respond. Indigenous Voices was created as a result of some pretty troubling things that were presented in some of our schools around, it happened to be around Thanksgiving, and so having families and teachers, so families having a perspective of saying, this is how I was harmed, this is how my child was harmed in this curriculum specifically, and teachers saying, I don't know, my intentions weren't to harm. I don't really know what you mean. And so that course came out organically. So a lot of these courses, including the LGBTQ, IA, and I is the intersectional, A is asexual, but that the reason for that course, truly, when we look at our suicide risk assessments right now in our district, a lot of children who are wondering about their identities and where do I fit and what does this mean, they're hurting. And so the more we can be responsive to that, the better. And we don't want to be reactionary. We don't want to wait until something happens before we create a course. But those courses have been created for that reason. Now, other courses that you mentioned, do we do a religious? And again, these are for the adults. These are not the children courses. These are for teachers and staff members and classified, certified staff. Other courses that are absolutely under consideration right now, we're looking at, there's an experience, when I think about the Latino community, for example, in our district, we have a large number of Spanish-speaking students that come from so many countries. And right now, there is almost this tendency to create a narrative that children who speak Spanish have the same experience. It's not the truth. So it's how do we do service, knowing that we have so many countries that speak Spanish, how do we do service in a cultural competent way that doesn't minimize or invalidate the vast experience within the Latino community? We also, you had mentioned our Asian community as well. It's the same challenge. What we don't want to do is we don't want to say, okay, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about our Korean community, a little bit of time talking about our Chinese community, a little bit of time talking about our Indian community. We don't want to do that. Asia is a large continent. So how do we do service in offering up a course that, again, is affirming and not minimizing or invalidating? Another course that is also under consideration, and our charge is to go out to the community to say, what would it look like, sound like, and feel like for us to create a course that's responsive? Our African American, Black American, and African immigrant is also something that we are really trying to tackle. Our students who identify as Black American or African American have a different experience than our African immigrants. And oftentimes students are lumped together and walk into spaces and are seen as having the exact same experience. And that's just not the truth. So again, how do we create a course to educate our educators in a way that's responsive and makes sense? So that's where we're at with that. The other side of your question is, what about academics? So academics, we are held to the Colorado State standards, and that's what we use to guide our work and to see what do we need to teach, and that is kindergarten through 12th grade. So we're not losing sight of that at all. We are held accountable to all of the measures that ask us if we're doing well. What I would offer from the elementary principal perspective is sometimes, though, those standardized assessments do miss the full breadth of a child, because I might be a terrible test taker and brilliant in what I know and what I'm able to offer. So what we're doing is we're asking what other ways can we tap into that brilliance, knowing that some of us are gifted with standardized assessments, and I can go and I know what they're asking for, and it's a matter of, multiple choice, it's, playing the game of multiple choice. And some children, that's not where their gifts are. So how do we speak to both sides of that? So not losing sight of academics ever. That is our first and foremost. Raising achievement for all is our goal. Thank you.
We have
for the
about
question.
3 minutes left for questions.
Thank you. Yes.
First of all, I have to say that you guys do an excellent job. My as I mentioned here in the table, my youngest son is still in Cherry Creek School District. My oldest was all the way up to 8th grade. But the one thing that I would like to ask you about, and I'm not sure if it falls within your department, since you have the counseling, maybe it does, but one of my family's major concerns in talking to our kids as well right now is with vaping and how much that has permeated into middle school even, and high school obviously, but that seems to become like a terrible thing that's happening right now toward youth. So are you guys addressing it in any specific way, and
Yes.
if you mind talking about that?
Sure, and so that wouldn't necessarily come directly out of our office. When we think about vaping specifically, our security guards are involved at the high school level in particular. But a larger conversation around that, what's interesting is Brooke Gregory actually did a interview with all high school leaders from all 7 of our high schools. And what's interesting is the high school students' perspective specifically around vaping was that they're like, man, these adults, you guys are responsive. Like, you're quick. You know if somebody's vaping in the bathroom or whatever. Yet sometimes you miss the student who is crying out and saying, I don't want to be here anymore. So we're trying to make sure that as adults, we would need to be responsive to vaping. Absolutely. We don't want children to start doing things and harming their physical bodies. We don't want that. But what I heard them saying is, that's tangible. You can see that child. You're punishing that child or consequencing or whatever. But do you see the child who's also sitting in that space saying, you know why I'm vaping? It's because I'm hurting. And there's some mental health needs. So Dr. Siegfried has shared this at multiple community events, and he said we need to partner. So it's a challenge for us as a school district to attend to the mental health needs of our students, but how can we partner with our communities, faith-based organizations, reach out so that it is a larger village effort to really unpack the mental health needs of our students so we can decrease the suicidal ideation that's happening right now, and ultimately see, is there a link between what students are dabbling with in that self-medication and where their mental health needs lie. So thank you for the question.
One more question? Okay. LaToya, thank you so much. Now, we're not done. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. We do support a elementary school in North Denver with books, and there will be a book plate just like this. You see the little stack of them over there. I've got to deliver them, but those will be that'll be in the book plate of one of the new books that they purchase.
That is amazing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have one other job for you. You get to choose a ticket and make someone happy. Read the last 3 if you would.
Okay. The last 3, 934.
934. 934. Going once. Going twice.
Pull another ticket.
Is it? All right, all right.
The fix is in.
There's your lunch money.
The fix is in. That's so
It's been a long time since
Let's see. You see there's a blue marble in there?
Yep, there it
Okay.
is.
If you win,
There you go.
One clear.
Oh, 2 clear.
I'll take it.
Okay, you got it? Okay, here you go. Barb. Okay, well, don't forget, next week, Polio Pigs. And would you please join me in the things we think, say, and do? Is it the truth? Is it fair at all? Concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? will it be beneficial to all concerned? With that, go out and shovel your driveway.